Atomic Habits by James Clear introduces a framework for improving your life by making tiny, consistent changes to your daily habits which compound over time to produce remarkable results. Imagine this. You're on a plane leaving Los Angeles heading to New York. If the pilot adjusts the course by just 3.5 degrees barely noticeable, you won't land in New York at all. You'll end up in Washington, D.C., hundreds of miles away. That's the power of small changes. Tiny shifts barely visible in the moment can completely alter your destination over time. That's the idea James Clear begins with in Atomic Habits. He calls it the 1% rule, the simple but powerful idea that small habits, when repeated, consistently compound into extraordinary results. If you can get 1% better each day for a year, you'll end up 37 times better by the end of it. But the opposite is also true, 1% worse. Each day sends you spiraling in the other direction. Tiny decisions, small actions, and subtle choices, they all matter. Far more than we think. Clear shares a story about the British cycling team once, known for being embarrassingly bad. For nearly a century, they hadn't won a single Tour de France and even major bike. Manufacturers refused to sell them bikes, fearing it would hurt their reputation. Then in 2003, the team hired Dave Brailsford, a coach who believed in what he called the aggregation of marginal gains. Instead of chasing massive overhauls, he focused on tiny 1% improvements in every area, from redesigning bike seats to reducing tire friction, from testing massage gels to improving the rider's sleep. They even repainted the inside of their team truck white so dirt and dust would be easier to see and clean. Every small tweak seemed insignificant on its own, but together they created unstoppable momentum. Within 5 years, the British team won the Tour de France, then dominated the Olympics, breaking world records. Clear uses this story to show that success isn't the result of one massive leap, but the sum of many small steps. Habits are like compound interest for self-improvement, invisible at first, but powerful when they build over time. He compares it to ice melting. Imagine you're in a cold room, and there's a block of ice sitting on the table. The temperature rises slowly 25 degrees, 26, 27, 28, but nothing happens. Then at 32 degrees, the ice begins to melt. The energy you've been adding wasn't wasted. It was stored. That's how habits work. Progress often feels invisible until one day a breakthrough happens. What Clear calls the plateau of latent potential. Most people quit before this point because they don't see results. They go to the gym for a week and see no change.
They start saving money, and the balance barely moves.
But the truth is, success is not linear, it's exponential. You're planting seeds that take time to sprout. Clear says you do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. Goals set direction, but systems drive progress. This leads to a major shift in thinking. Instead of obsessing over outcomes, losing weight, earning more, writing a book, focus on the process that makes those results inevitable. Want to write a book? Build the habit of writing every day. Want to get fit? Build the habit of showing up to the gym, no matter what. It's the small daily actions that matter, not the big finish line. Clear also explains that habits can work both ways. They can build you up or break you down. Bad habits compound too. Eating poorly, skipping exercise, procrastinating. Each may feel minor in the moment, but over years they can destroy your health, happiness, and productivity. The real magic, he says, is in consistency over intensity. Big goals are exciting, but it's the boring, repetitive actions, the ones we often overlook, that actually create transformation. Just like compound interest turns cents into fortunes, habits turn small choices into major life changes. By the end of chapter 1, James Clear leaves us with one powerful truth. The small things you do today are shaping the person you'll become tomorrow. Every action is a vote for the kind of person you want to be. So don't chase overnight success. Don't wait for motivation or dramatic transformation. Instead, focus on being just 1% better every day. Because small habits don't just add up, they multiply. And over time, they can change everything. Imagine two people trying to quit smoking. When offered a cigarette, the first person says, "No thanks, I'm trying to quit." The second person says, "No thanks, I'm not a smoker." The difference is subtle but powerful. The first person still identifies as a smoker who's attempting to change. The second has already assumed a new identity. And that shift in identity makes all the difference. In Chapter 2 of Atomic Habits, James Clear explains that true behavior change isn't about achieving goals, it's about becoming the kind of person who achieves them. He calls this the difference between outcome-based habits and identity-based habits. Most people start with outcomes. I want to lose weight. I want to write a book. I want to run a marathon. These are results-focused goals. Then they decide on the process: diet, exercise, writing schedule, training plan. But Clear argues there's a deeper layer beneath both of these. Identity, the beliefs you hold about yourself. Real change, he says, starts from the inside out. You don't just want to have results. You want to become the type of person who produces those results naturally. Instead of saying, I want to read more, say, I'm the kind of person who loves to learn. Instead of, I want to get fit, say, I'm an active, healthy person. Why does this matter? Because your habits are not just actions. They are votes for the type of person you wish to be. Every time you make your bed, you cast a vote for being an organized person. Every time you study, you cast a vote for being a disciplined student. Every time you work out, you cast a vote for being fit and strong. You don't need unanimous votes to win an election. You just need a majority. Likewise, identity is built gradually through small, repeated actions. Over time, these habits accumulate evidence of who you are. Clear emphasizes that many people struggle with change because they focus on what they want to achieve instead of who they want to become. The problem is that goals focus on the end result, something in the future. But identity focuses on the present, on what you do today. He gives the example of someone trying to stay organized. You can clean your room once that's a goal. But unless you change your identity to I'm someone who values order and cleanliness, you'll always fall back into clutter. Sustainable change happens when your behavior and your identity are aligned. Clear also explains that identity can work against you. Sometimes old beliefs about who we are hold us back. Maybe you've told yourself, I'm bad with money. I'm terrible at remembering names, or I'm not a morning person. Over time, these labels become self-fulfilling. They trap you inside a narrative that limits your growth. But the truth is, identities are not fixed. They're flexible. You can rewrite the story you tell yourself at any time. Every small habit is a chance to prove a new story true. When you show up at the gym, even for 10 minutes, you're reinforcing, I'm the kind of person who doesn't miss workouts. When you sit down to write, even for a paragraph, you're reinforcing, I'm a writer. This chapter's message is clear. Your habits are not just a path to success. They are the process of becoming yourself. You don't build habits to get something. You build them to become someone. Clear challenges readers to ask a simple but powerful question. Who is the type of person I want to become? Once you know the answer, the next step is to prove it to yourself in small ways every single day. For example, if you want to become healthier, ask, what would a healthy person do? Then do that. Eat one nutritious meal, go for a short walk, drink water instead of soda. Each action is a vote for that identity. In the end, Clear reminds us that goals are useful for setting direction, but systems and the identities they reinforce are what lead to lasting progress. You can't fake being someone new. You must act your way into a new identity. So don't worry about being perfect. Focus on showing up again and again as the kind of person you wish to become. Because every habit, no matter how small, is a step toward proving that new identity true. And that's how real, lasting change happens, not by chasing goals, but by becoming the kind of person who naturally achieves them. Have you ever wondered why some habits stick effortlessly, while others feel impossible to maintain? In Chapter 3 of Atomic Habits, James Clear breaks down the hidden pattern behind every behavior we do, good or bad. He explains that all habits follow the same simple 4-step process. Once we understand this loop, we can design habits that actually work. Clear starts with an observation: habits are not random. They're our brain's way of saving effort. The mind is always searching for efficient ways to respond to everyday situations, so it automates repeated behaviors. Whether it's brushing your teeth, checking your phone, or tying your shoes, habits free up mental energy for more important tasks. He introduces what he calls the habit loop, a 4-step feedback process that drives every behavior we perform. These steps are cue, craving, response, and reward. Together they explain why habits form and how to change them. Let's break it down. First, there's the cue, a trigger that tells your brain to start a behavior. It's a piece of information that predicts a reward. For example, you see your phone light up, that's the cue. Next comes the craving, the motivation or desire behind the behavior. You don't really crave the phone itself, you crave the feeling of connection, the curiosity of knowing who texted you. Every habit is driven by a craving for a change in state, to feel relaxed, satisfied, or excited. Then comes the response, the actual behavior or action you take. You pick up the phone and read the message. Finally, there's the reward, the benefit you get from doing the action. You feel connected, entertained, or informed. That reward teaches your brain that the behavior is worth remembering. Over time, this cycle, cue, craving, response, reward, repeats itself, automatically turning conscious decisions into unconscious habits. Clear explains that this loop is the engine of all habits, both good and bad. For instance, if you feel stressed, cue, you crave relief, craving, you smoke a cigarette, response, and you feel calm, reward. The next time you're stressed, your brain remembers that cigarettes provide relief. That's how the pattern strengthens. So, if every habit follows this same formula, how can we use it to build better ones? Clear answers this question with what he calls the 4 laws of behavior. Change 4 simple rules that map directly onto each stage of the habit loop. 1. Make it obvious. You must first make the cues of good habits visible and clear. If you want to read more, put your book where you'll see it. If you want to exercise, keep your workout clothes ready. What's obvious becomes easy to start. 2. Make it attractive. Pair the habit with something you enjoy or focus on the benefits rather than the effort. When a habit feels appealing, you'll naturally crave it more. 3. Make it easy. Reduce friction. The easier the behavior, the more likely you are to do it. Start small. Even 2 minutes of effort can begin a lasting routine. 4. Make it satisfying. We repeat what feels good. Add an immediate sense of reward, whether it's checking off a box on a tracker or simply feeling proud of showing up. Satisfaction seals the habit. Clear emphasizes that bad habits follow the same pattern, just in reverse. To break a bad habit, do the opposite of the 4 laws. Make it invisible, unattractive, difficult, and unsatisfying. He also makes an important point. You can't eliminate habits entirely. You can only replace them. The goal isn't to erase the habit loop, but to redirect it toward a new behavior. If you understand what you crave, peace, relief, connection, you can satisfy that craving in a healthier way. By the end of Chapter 3, James Clear gives us a powerful framework. All behavior is driven by the desire to solve a problem. If you can identify the cue that starts your habit, the craving that motivates it, the response you take, and the reward you get, you can redesign the pattern. You can train your brain to associate different actions with the same rewards. And that's how lasting change begins. So the next time you want to build a new habit or break an old one, remember this formula: cue, craving, response, reward. It's simple, universal, and incredibly powerful. Every habit, good or bad, follows this rhythm. And once you can see the pattern clearly, you gain the power to change it. Have you ever wondered why you sometimes repeat a habit without even realizing it? You open the fridge without being hungry, scroll through your phone without meaning to, or grab a snack, just because it's sitting there. In Chapter 4 of Atomic Habits, James Clear reveals why our habits are triggered by cues hidden in plain sight. The first law of behavior change is simple: make it obvious. Clear begins with the story of a group of researchers in a British hospital who wanted doctors to wash their hands more often. Despite posters and reminders, compliance was low. Then someone installed a monitor that showed in real time how often the staff washed their hands and how infection rates dropped when they did. Within weeks, hand washing skyrocketed. What changed wasn't motivation, it was visibility. The cue became obvious. Our environment is constantly sending us signals, sights, sounds, smells that trigger automatic behavior. We don't need motivation to start a habit, we just need the right cue in front of us. Clear calls this the cue-based nature of habits. When the cue is invisible, the habit fades. When it's clear and visible, the habit activates almost effortlessly. Think about your own environment. If the first thing you see when you walk into your kitchen is a bowl of fruit, you'll probably eat healthier. But if you see cookies on the counter, that becomes the default choice. We like to think we're in control of our habits. But in truth, environment, design often determines behavior more than willpower ever could. Clear then introduces a powerful tool called the Habits Scorecard. It's a simple self-awareness exercise. List out all your daily habits from waking up to going to bed and mark each as positive, negative, or neutral. You're not judging yourself. You're just observing, because you can't change what you don't notice. Awareness always precedes transformation. Once you know which habits serve you and which don't, you can start reshaping your surroundings to guide your behavior. For example, if you want to drink more water, keep a full glass on your desk. If you want to practice guitar, place it in the middle of your living room instead of hiding it in the closet. The clearer the cue, the easier the habit. Next, Clear introduces another strategy called implementation intentions a fancy term for a simple idea. Decide in advance when and where you'll perform a habit. Instead of saying, "I'll work out more," say, "I'll go for a 20-minute jog at 6 a.m. in the park." This transforms vague hopes into concrete plans. Studies show that people who write down exactly when and where they'll perform a new habit are far more likely to follow through. But Clear goes even deeper with what he calls habit stacking, linking a new habit to an existing one. The formula is after current habit, I will new habit. For example, after I brush my teeth, I'll floss. After I make my morning coffee, I'll read one page of a book. This method works because the current habit acts as a reliable cue, one that already exists in your daily rhythm. Over time, small routines connect, forming chains of positive behaviors that flow naturally from one to the next. Clear reminds us that our environment is the invisible hand that shapes our actions. If you want to make a habit, stick, don't rely on motivation. Design your space so the good behaviors are obvious and the bad ones are hidden. Want to watch less TV? Unplug it after each use or hide the remote. Want to eat less junk food? Store it out of sight or don't buy it at all. The best way to break a bad habit is to make the cues invisible. The message of this chapter is clear and practical. You don't rise to the level of your motivation, you fall to the level of your environment. Habits are built not through willpower, but through visibility, structure, and design. So if you want to change your life, start by changing what you see every day. Rearrange your surroundings so that the cues for your good habits shine like neon signs and the cues for your bad habits fade quietly into the background. Because what's obvious gets done, and what's invisible gets forgotten. Have you ever wondered why some habits are easy to stick with while others feel like a constant battle? In Chapter 5 of Atomic Habits, James Clear explains that the key lies in how attractive a habit feels. The more appealing a habit is, the more likely we are to do it. This is the essence of the second law of behavior change. Make it attractive. Clear begins with an insight into human nature. Our brains are wired for reward. We don't just repeat habits because they're useful. We repeat them because they make us feel good. From eating sweet foods to checking notifications, our minds are driven by dopamine, the chemical of desire and motivation. But here's the twist. Dopamine doesn't just spike when we get a reward, it spikes when we anticipate one. That means craving drives us more powerfully than satisfaction itself. Think about it. The excitement you feel before opening a gift is often stronger than the feeling after you open it. That's how habits hook us through the anticipation of pleasure. Clear uses this to explain why temptation, bundling, pairing something you want to do with something you need to do can make good habits more attractive. For example, if you only watch your favorite show while exercising on the treadmill, the workout becomes more appealing. You're no longer forcing yourself to exercise, you're looking forward to the reward that comes with it. This simple trick transforms a dull habit into an enjoyable one. He also shares a fascinating insight from the world of social behavior. Our habits aren't just shaped by what we like, they're shaped by who we like. Humans are deeply social creatures, and we naturally imitate the habits of three groups. 1. The close, our family and friends. 2. The many, the larger group or culture around us. 3. The powerful, those we admire or aspire to be like. This means if you want to adopt a new habit, surround yourself with people who already live the way you want to. Want to get fit? Join a gym where fitness is part of the culture. Want to read more? Spend time with people who talk about books. Environment shapes behavior, but community amplifies it. When good habits are normal in your group, they become easier, even automatic. Clear explains that our brains are built to seek belonging. We don't want to stand out or be left behind, so we subconsciously mimic the behaviors of those around us. That's why peer pressure can be both destructive and powerful. The trick is to use it for good, to find environments where your desired behavior is the normal behavior. Next, Clear explores how reframing can make habits more appealing. Often we think of good habits as chores. I have to go for a run, or I have to cook dinner. But if we shift the language to I get to, everything changes. I get to move my body and become stronger. I get to cook a healthy meal for myself. This small change in mindset can transform obligation into opportunity. He reminds us that every behavior has a surface-level reason and a deeper emotional reason. You don't just crave the gym, you crave confidence. You don't just want money, you crave security. By understanding the emotion behind your habits, you can find more satisfying ways to fulfill them. The lesson of this chapter is simple yet powerful. If you want a habit to stick, make it something you look forward to, not something you dread. Combine the things you enjoy with the things you need to do. Shape your environment and your community so that the good habits feel rewarding, attractive, and socially reinforced. By the end of chapter 5, James Clear leaves us with a practical truth. Motivation comes naturally when a habit feels good. You don't have to fight your nature, you just have to redirect it. The goal isn't to force discipline, it's to make discipline desirable. So ask yourself, how can I make my good habits irresistible? Maybe it's listening to music while cleaning, treating yourself after studying, or surrounding yourself with people who make excellence feel normal. Because when a habit feels good to do, when it's attractive, consistency stops being a struggle and starts becoming second nature. Think about the last time you tried to start a new habit. Maybe you planned to go to the gym, start journaling, or learn a new skill. You probably felt motivated in the beginning, but after a few days, life got busy and your motivation faded. In Chapter 6 of Atomic Habits, James Clear explains why this happens and how to fix it. The answer lies in the third law of behavior change. Make it easy. We often believe that to make big changes, we need massive effort. But Clear flips that idea on its head. The truth is, habits are not formed by motivation, they're formed by repetition. It's not about doing something perfectly, it's about doing it consistently. The more you repeat a behavior, the more automatic it becomes. Clear puts it simply, you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. If you want to master a habit, focus on starting small and making it effortless. The easier a habit is to begin, the more likely you'll keep doing it. He introduces the concept of the law of least effort. Our brains are wired to follow the path of least resistance. If something is easy, we'll do it without thinking. If it's hard, we'll put it off no matter how motivated we are. That's why good habits should be made simple and bad habits should be made difficult. For example, if you want to exercise, don't focus on an hour-long workout. Start by putting on your running shoes. If you want to read more, leave a book on your pillow so you'll see it before bed. Want to eat healthier? Prep fruits and veggies in advance and keep them in sight. The key is to reduce friction, those little obstacles that make starting harder than it needs to be. Clear shares the story of a man who wanted to get in shape but couldn't stick to his workout routine. So he made a new rule for himself. He'd go to the gym every day, but he wasn't allowed to stay for more than 5 minutes. At first, it sounded silly, but after several weeks, he had built the habit of simply showing up. Once showing up became second nature, he naturally stayed longer. The lesson? Make it so easy you can't say no. This leads to one of Clear's most practical ideas, the 2-minute rule. It says that when you start a new habit, it should take less than 2 minutes to do. Want to build a reading habit? Read 1 page. Want to start meditating? Sit quietly for 2 minutes. Want to start journaling? Write one sentence. These small actions might seem insignificant, but they lower the barrier to entry. Starting is the hardest part, and once you are in motion, momentum takes over. Clear explains that the goal in the beginning is not perfection, it's mastering the art of showing up. Each repetition reinforces your identity. I'm someone who exercises. I'm someone who reads. I'm someone who takes care of my health. Once your identity shifts, the habit becomes easier to maintain. He also reminds us that just as we can reduce friction for good habits, we can increase friction for bad ones. If you want to watch less TV, unplug it or put the remote in another room. If you want to stop checking your phone so often, leave it in a drawer. By adding even a small amount of effort, you interrupt the automatic loop that drives bad behavior. In short, the easier it is to start a good habit, the more likely you'll stick with it. Motivation might get you started, but simplicity keeps you going. Clear closes the chapter by emphasizing that success is not about radical transformation, it's about steady, repeated action. It's the small, easy steps done consistently that create real change over time. So if you want to make your habits last, stop trying to be perfect. Don't wait for motivation or the right time. Instead, make your habits so easy that doing them feels natural. Because when good habits are simple to start and bad ones are hard to do, progress becomes inevitable. And that's the power of the third law. Make it easy and success will follow naturally. Why do we repeat some behaviors over and over while others fade away after a few tries? In Chapter 7 of Atomic Habits, James Clear answers that question with the fourth law of behavior change. Make it satisfying. The key idea is simple. What's rewarded gets repeated, and what's punished gets avoided. If a habit feels good in the moment, your brain learns to crave it. If it feels unpleasant, your brain learns to avoid it. Clear begins by explaining a crucial truth about human nature. Our brains are wired for instant gratification. We evolved in a world where immediate rewards, food safety, comfort were essential for survival. But today, most of our biggest goals, like getting fit, saving money, or building a business, offer delayed rewards. The results come weeks, months, or even years later. That's why good habits are often hard to stick to. The reward isn't instant. Think about it. You go to the gym today, but you don't see results right away. You eat a salad, and you still weigh the same tomorrow. Meanwhile, bad habits like eating, junk food, or scrolling on your phone give you pleasure immediately. They're easy to repeat because the brain gets instant satisfaction. So the secret, Clear says, is to make good habits immediately satisfying and make bad habits immediately unsatisfying. He introduces the idea of reinforcement, the process of using immediate rewards to make a behavior stick. For example, if you're trying to save money, transfer a small amount to a fun account every time you hit a savings goal. If you're trying to exercise, track your workouts on a wall, calendar, and mark each day with a big red X. The simple act of seeing that streak grow is satisfying. It gives you a small win that fuels your motivation. This concept is sometimes called the paperclip strategy. Clear shares the story of a stockbroker who kept 2 jars on his desk, one filled with paperclips, the other empty. Each time he made a sales call, he moved one paperclip from the full jar to the empty one. By the end of the day, the progress was visible. It turned an invisible goal into a satisfying, tangible action. These small visual rewards help bridge what Clear calls the valley of disappointment, that frustrating period when you're working hard but don't yet see results. By making progress visible and rewarding, you create motivation to keep going until the long-term rewards kick in. But satisfaction isn't just about rewards, it's also about identity. Each time you follow through on a habit, you get a small sense of pride, a signal that you're becoming the kind of person you want to be. That feeling of alignment, of acting in harmony with your goals, is deeply satisfying in itself. Clear also introduces another simple but powerful tool, habit tracking. Whether it's a notebook, an app, or a calendar, tracking your habits creates a visual reminder of your progress. It turns invisible success into something you can see. The human brain loves closure. Seeing a streak grow gives you a rush of satisfaction and pushes you to keep it alive. That's why people often say, don't break the chain. Of course, Clear warns that missing a habit once isn't failure, but missing twice in a row can be dangerous. The rule is never miss twice. One mistake is an accident. 2 mistakes are the start of a new pattern. He also points out that satisfaction can work in reverse. To break a bad habit, make it immediately painful. Use accountability partners or habit contracts. Small commitments that add a short-term consequence for slipping up. For instance, if you skip your workout, you might pay a friend $10. The immediate sting helps your brain associate the bad habit with discomfort instead of pleasure. By the end of Chapter 7, Clear's message is powerful and clear. Lasting habits are not just built on discipline or willpower. They're built on enjoyment. When good habits are satisfying and rewarding, they reinforce themselves. So if you want a habit to last, make it feel good now, not just later. Celebrate small wins, track your progress, and reward yourself for consistency. Because progress that feels satisfying becomes progress that sticks. In the end, success isn't about grinding harder, it's about designing habits that your brain loves to repeat. When a habit is obvious, attractive, easy, and satisfying, it becomes inevitable. And that's how you create lasting change, one satisfying habit at a time. We all have habits we wish we could break: scrolling on our phones late at night, eating a junk food, procrastinating, or spending too much time watching TV. In Chapter 8 of Atomic Habits, James Clear shows that breaking bad habits isn't about willpower or punishment. It's about reversing the laws of behavior change. Earlier in the book, Clear introduced the 4 laws of behavior change for building good habits. 1. Make it obvious. 2. Make it attractive. 3. Make it easy. 4. Make it satisfying. To break a bad habit, we simply invert these laws. 1. Make it invisible. 2. Make it unattractive. 3. Make it difficult. 4. Make it unsatisfying. This is how we dismantle the cues, cravings, responses, and rewards that keep bad habits alive. Clear starts by explaining the first step. Make it invisible. Every habit begins with a cue, something in your environment that triggers the behavior. If you can't see the cue, you won't be reminded to act. For example, if you're trying to watch less TV, unplug it and put the remote in another room. If you're trying to eat healthier, hide junk food in the back of the pantry and keep fruits and vegetables in plain sight. What you don't see, you don't do. The second step is make it unattractive. Habits become appealing because your brain associates them with pleasure. To break one, you have to change the story you tell yourself about it. For instance, instead of thinking, I'm rewarding myself with fast food, think, this food drains my energy and slows me down. Instead of checking social media helps me relax. Try endlessly. Scrolling leaves me anxious and distracted. By reframing how you see the habit, you weaken its emotional pull. Then comes the third step. Make it difficult. Bad habits thrive on convenience. The easier something is to do, the more likely you'll do it. So to break the pattern, increase friction. Add small barriers that interrupt the automatic cycle. If you waste time on your phone, delete the apps that tempt you or log out after every use. If you overspend online, remove your saved credit card details. Even tiny bits of extra effort, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, can make a big difference. Clear calls this technique adding friction. The more effort required to perform a bad habit, the less often you'll do it. Likewise, you can make good habits easier by removing friction, laying out your gym, clothes in advance, prepping your meals, or keeping your workspace ready for action. The key is to make good habits frictionless and bad habits friction-full. Finally, make it unsatisfying. We repeat what feels good. So if a bad habit brings immediate pleasure, like eating sweets or checking notifications, you need to add a short-term consequence to balance it out. Clear suggests using accountability partners or habit contracts. For example, you might agree to pay a friend $10 every time you skip the gym or fail to meet a goal. The sting of immediate pain creates a sense of responsibility that keeps you honest. Accountability leverages our social instincts. We care deeply about how others perceive us. Knowing that someone is watching can make the difference between quitting and following through. Clear also reminds us that breaking a bad habit doesn't mean you have to eliminate it entirely right away. The goal is to interrupt the pattern to make the behavior less automatic. Over time, as the cue loses its power and the reward fades, the craving weakens. What was once effortless becomes forgettable. One of the most powerful ideas in this chapter is that you don't need to be perfect. You just need to be aware. Awareness gives you the power to change the story. Every time you resist an old habit, you're casting a vote for the person you want to become disciplined, focused, and in control. Clear closes the chapter with a reminder bad habits often form because they serve us in some way. They relieve stress, provide comfort, or offer escape. So instead of fighting against them, find healthier ways to meet the same need. Replace the craving, not just the behavior. In the end, breaking bad habits is not about restriction. It's about redesigning your environment, reframing your mindset, and reprogramming your responses. When you make bad habits invisible, unattractive, difficult, and unsatisfying, you remove their power over you. And just like that, you reclaim control one small conscious choice at a time. Have you ever noticed how the people around you shape the way you think, act, and live? Whether it's how you eat, talk, dress, or even dream, much of it is influenced by your environment and the people in it. In Chapter 9 of Atomic Habits, James Clear explains that one of the most powerful forces behind our habits isn't personal discipline, it's social influence. He begins by reminding us that humans are social creatures. For thousands of years, our survival depended on belonging to a tribe. Being accepted meant safety, being rejected meant danger. That instinct still drives us today. We naturally mimic the habits, beliefs, and behaviors of those around us, often without realizing it. Clear says that we tend to imitate the habits of 3 specific groups. 1. The close, the people we spend the most time with. 2. The many, the larger crowd or culture we belong to. 3. The powerful, the people we look up to or aspire to be like. Let's look at each of these. First, the close. We pick up behaviors from the people closest to us: family, friends, co-workers, even roommates. If your family eats healthy meals, you're more likely to do the same. If your friends love to work out, you'll probably join them. But if your co-workers often skip the gym and grab fast food, you'll feel pulled in that direction too. This is why your immediate social circle matters so much. Habits are contagious. If you want to build better habits, surround yourself with people who already live the way you want to live. Want to read more? Join a book club. Want to get fit? Spend time with active people. Want to be more positive? Hang out with those who lift you up instead of bringing you down. Next, the many. Humans have a deep desire to belong to the group. We look to others to decide what's normal and acceptable. If most people around you act a certain way, you tend to follow. Clear calls this the herd mentality. For example, if everyone at work stays late, you'll feel pressure to do the same. If everyone around you drinks at social events, it's hard to say no. But this tendency can also work in your favor. When good habits are the norm in your environment, they become easier to adopt. Clear gives an example of a hospital cafeteria study when researchers placed healthier foods in more visible areas. More people started choosing them, not because they suddenly cared more about nutrition, but because it became the new social default. The environment quietly shaped the group's behavior. Finally, there's the powerful. We naturally imitate people we admire, those with success, confidence, or status. If we see someone we respect practicing a habit, we subconsciously want to do the same. That's why role models are so important. They show us what's possible. Clear suggests identifying people who embody the habits or values you want to develop, and then learning from them, whether it's through friendship, mentorship, or even observation. Success leaves clues, and the fastest way to change is to spend time around those who already live the way you aspire to. He also reminds us that social environments can either pull you forward or hold you back. If you're surrounded by people who constantly reinforce your bad habits, it's extremely difficult to grow. But when you enter a group where your desired behavior is the norm, change happens almost automatically. You no longer feel like you're forcing yourself. You're simply fitting in. Clear calls this joining a culture where your desired behavior is the normal behavior. It's one of the most effective ways to make change stick. You won't have to fight against social pressure. You'll have it working for you. The key takeaway from this chapter is that your environment is more than the space around you. It's also the people within it. Your friends, family, co-workers, and community are constantly shaping who you become. So if you want to change your habits, don't just focus on your personal willpower. Focus on your tribe. Seek out groups, communities, and people who represent your future, not your past. Because over time, you become like the people you're closest to. In the end, Clear leaves us with a simple truth. If you want to make lasting change, surround yourself with people who make your desired habits feel normal, natural, and celebrated. Choose your tribe wisely, because your habits are not just personal decisions, they're social reflections of the company you keep. Why do we keep doing things we know aren't good for us? Why do bad habits seem to sneak back into our lives, even when we try so hard to change? In Chapter 10 of Atomic Habits, James Clear explains that the key to breaking bad habits isn't more willpower, it's better self-awareness. He shows us how to find the root cause behind our behaviors and fix them from the inside out. Clear begins with a simple idea. Every behavior serves a purpose. Whether it's smoking, procrastinating, checking your phone, or overeating. Each habit provides some form of benefit, even if it's temporary. Bad habits don't happen because we're broken or weak. They happen because at some point they worked. They relieved stress, filled boredom, or gave us comfort. To truly fix a bad habit, we have to understand why it exists. Clear introduces a concept called the habit loop, made up of 4 steps: cue, craving, response, and reward. Every habit, good or bad, follows this cycle. The cue triggers your brain to start a behavior. The craving motivates you to act. The response is the habit itself. And the reward satisfies your desire and teaches your brain to repeat the cycle next time. Let's take an example. Imagine you're bored at work. That's the cue. You crave stimulation, something to entertain you. That's the craving. You pick up your phone and start scrolling through social media. That's the response. You feel a brief hit of dopamine, the reward. The brain learns. When I'm bored, checking my phone makes me feel better. And just like that, a habit is born. To fix bad habits, you can't just suppress the response. You have to interrupt the loop before it even starts. Clear suggests starting by identifying your habit cues. Ask yourself, what triggers this behavior? Is it a certain time of day? A specific location? A particular emotion or group of people? Once you find the cue, you can begin to change your reaction. He introduces a tool called the Habit Scorecard, a simple exercise to build awareness. Write down your daily habits one by one and mark each as positive, plus, negative, out, or neutral. For example, wake up plus, check phone, brush teeth plus, skip breakfast, scroll Instagram, go to work, hastapua. This isn't about judgment. It's about seeing your patterns clearly. You can't change what you don't notice. Clear emphasizes that awareness creates choice. Once you understand why a habit happens, you can design a new system that makes the better choice easier. For example, if you always snack when you're stressed, find another stress reliever, take a walk, breathe deeply, or write for 5 minutes. You're not removing the need, you're replacing how you meet it. He also talks about reframing your habits. Instead of saying, I have to stop eating junk food, say, I'm someone who fuels my body with healthy food. Instead of, I have to quit procrastinating, say, I'm someone who takes action immediately. Language shapes identity, and identity shapes behavior. When you shift how you think about yourself, your actions start to align naturally. Clear points out that our environment often fuels our bad habits without us realizing it. The key isn't to rely on willpower, but to restructure your surroundings. If you always waste time on your phone before bed, leave it in another room. If you snack too much, don't buy the snacks. Make the bad habit invisible and inconvenient. As he says, you can't stick to positive habits in a negative environment. Another powerful insight from this chapter is that most bad habits are modern solutions to ancient desires. We want to feel pleasure, reduce uncertainty, and connect with others the same instincts humans have always had. The difference is that today's world gives us instant ways to satisfy those needs, often in unhealthy ways. The problem isn't the desire, it's the method. When you find healthier ways to meet the same need, bad habits lose their grip. Clear ends the chapter with this message: awareness is the first step toward control. You don't need to be perfect, you just need to be conscious. When you understand the cue, craving, and reward driving your behavior, you can redesign your habits instead of repeating them. In short, the way to break a bad habit is not to fight your nature, but to understand it. Once you know the real reason behind your actions, you gain the power to change them one mindful choice at a time. Progress doesn't always happen in giant leaps. More often, it's the result of steady, patient movement, small steps taken over and over again. In Chapter 11 of Atomic Habits, James Clear delivers one of the book's most encouraging lessons. Lasting success is not about speed, it's about consistency. Or as he puts it, walk slowly but never backward. Clear begins by addressing a common trap we all fall into: the desire for quick results. When we start a new habit, whether it's going to the gym, learning a skill, or saving money, we expect to see progress fast. But real improvement rarely works that way. Change is often invisible in the early stages. It's like heating an ice cube. The energy builds up, but nothing seems to happen until one final degree melts it completely. This is why so many people give up too soon. They misinterpret slow progress as failure. But Clear reminds us that slow progress is still progress. What matters isn't how fast you move, but that you keep moving forward. Small gains compound over time, just like money earns interest. Every tiny step puts you closer to the person you want to become. He gives the example of professional athletes and artists who seem to have achieved overnight success. In reality, their breakthroughs were years in the making, the result of daily practice, small refinements, and continuous learning. The outside world sees the explosion of success, but not the long, quiet grind behind it. Clear explains that focusing on speed can actually be harmful. When we rush, we chase shortcuts. We set unrealistic goals, burn out, and end up quitting altogether. But if we learn to embrace the process, to love the slow rhythm of improvement, we create habits that last a lifetime. He shares a story about a photography class. The teacher divided students into two groups. One group was graded on the quantity of photos they took, the more pictures the better. The other was graded on quality, they only had to produce one perfect photo. By the end of the term, the group that focused on quantity actually produced higher quality photos. Why? Because they were constantly practicing, learning, and improving through repetition. The lesson is simple: motion leads to mastery. You don't need to be perfect to make progress, you just need to keep showing up. Every repetition, every small effort is a vote for your future self. Clear also highlights the importance of patience and trust in the process. Habits work through the principle of compounding. Their results multiply over time. One good workout won't transform your body, and one healthy meal won't change your health, but a year of consistent action will. As Clear writes, the task of building a good habit is like cultivating a delicate flower. One day of neglect can undo weeks of growth. He encourages us to think long-term and measure progress not by where we are, but by how far we've come. Even on days when you feel unmotivated or tired, the goal is to simply not move backward. Show up. Do something small. Keep the habit alive, even if it's just a 5-minute version, because momentum matters more than intensity. Clear also reminds us that success is not linear. Growth comes in waves, bursts of improvement followed by plateaus. The key is to stay steady during those flat periods. If you keep walking, even slowly, eventually you'll reach another breakthrough. Most people quit during the plateau just before results start to appear. One of the most powerful lines in this chapter is this: you do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. It's not about how ambitious you are, it's about how consistent your system allows you to be. Clear's advice is both practical and profound. Don't rush. Don't panic. Don't stop. Progress may be slow, but it's never wasted. Every small action compounds. And every step forward, no matter how tiny, brings you closer to mastery. So walk slowly but never backward, because even if you move at the pace of a snail, you're still lapping everyone who's standing still. And over time, those tiny, consistent steps will lead to extraordinary transformation. Why do we always seem to take the easiest route, even when we know it's not the best one? Why is it so easy to fall into bad habits like watching TV or scrolling on our phones, and so hard to build good ones, like reading, exercising, or eating healthy? In Chapter 12 of Atomic Habits, James Clear answers this with a simple truth. Human behavior follows the law of least effort. In other words, when faced with multiple options, people naturally gravitate toward the one that requires the least amount of work. It's not because we're lazy, it's because our brains are wired to conserve energy. For our ancestors, saving effort meant survival. And even today, our minds and bodies are still drawn to whatever feels easiest and most convenient. Clear's insight is powerful. If you want to stick to a good habit, make it as easy as possible. And if you want to break a bad habit, make it harder to do. Success, he says, isn't about willpower, it's about design. He shares a simple but brilliant example. Imagine two people who both want to eat healthier. The first person keeps chips and cookies on the counter and stores vegetables in the fridge drawer. The second person does the opposite. They keep fruit and healthy snacks visible and hide the junk food out of sight. Guess who eats better without even thinking about it? The difference isn't motivation, it's convenience. Clear calls this process reducing friction. Every habit has a certain amount of friction, the effort it takes to get started. The more friction, the harder it feels. The less friction, the easier it becomes. So if you want to exercise more, don't make it complicated. Lay out your workout clothes the night before. Keep your gym bag by the door. If you want to read more, put a book on your pillow so you see it before bed. Small changes that reduce friction make a huge difference over time. He also explains how technology and modern life often work against us. Everything around us is designed to make bad habits easier: fast food, streaming, social media, online shopping. These systems make pleasure effortless and immediate. That's why it's so important to create your own environment that makes good habits easier and bad ones harder. Clear gives the example of television. If you find yourself watching too much TV, unplug it after each use and store the remote in another room. Suddenly watching becomes a hassle, and that small bit of friction can help you choose something else instead. On the flip side, he introduces a clever concept called priming the environment. It means preparing your surroundings, so your next action requires as little effort as possible. For instance, if you want to write every morning, leave your notebook and pen on the desk the night before. If you want to cook more at home, chop vegetables ahead of time. If you want to drink more water, keep a glass on your nightstand. The key idea is that your environment often determines your behavior more than your motivation does. You don't need to force yourself to be disciplined. You just need to make the right choice, the easy choice. Clear writes, the greater the friction, the less likely the habit. That's why the best way to change your habits is to reshape your surroundings so good decisions happen naturally. As he puts it, environment design is the hidden engine that drives human behavior. He also talks about automation, using tools and systems to lock in good habits with minimal effort. For example, set up automatic savings transfers instead of relying on willpower to save. Use reminders, timers, or scheduling tools to take decisions out of your hands. Once a system is in place, your desired behavior becomes automatic. By the end of the chapter, Clear's message becomes clear and deeply practical. Stop relying on motivation, it's inconsistent. Instead, focus on reducing friction for good habits and increasing friction for bad ones. Design your life so the easiest path leads where you want to go. Because in the end, the path of least resistance determines the path of your life. If you make the right habits effortless, success becomes inevitable. So don't wait for willpower. Shape your environment, simplify your process, and make progress the easy choice. Because the truth is, small design changes today create massive results tomorrow. That's the power of the law of least effort. We all know that feeling, the endless cycle of saying, I'll start tomorrow. Whether it's exercising, studying, cleaning, or working on a project, procrastination can quietly kill our goals. In Chapter 13 of Atomic Habits, James Clear offers a surprisingly simple but life-changing strategy to beat procrastination, and build momentum. The 2-minute rule. The idea is simple. When you start a new habit, it should take less than 2 minutes to do. That's it. Clear calls this the gateway. Habit, a tiny action that gets you moving in the right direction. Instead of trying to run for 30 minutes, just put on your running shoes. Instead of promising to read a book every night, just open it and read 1 page. Instead of committing to meditate for 10 minutes, just sit down and take 1 deep breath. The goal isn't to do the whole thing, it's to start. Because once you start, momentum takes over. Clear explains that the hardest part of any habit is not doing it, it's starting it. Once you begin, your brain shifts from thinking mode to action mode and everything becomes easier. Think of it like pushing a car. The first few inches are tough, but once it's rolling, it takes far less effort to keep it moving. He tells a story about a man who wanted to get in shape but couldn't stick to a routine. So he decided to use the 2-minute rule. For the first few weeks, he didn't even work out. He just went to the gym every day and stayed for 5 minutes. That's it. He'd walk in, do 1 exercise, and leave. People laughed, but eventually showing up became automatic. Once the habit of going to the gym was established, he naturally started staying longer and working harder. In time, he transformed his body, not through intensity, but through consistency. That's the magic of the 2-minute rule. It helps you master the art of showing up. You're not focused on results. You're focused on forming identity. Every time you start, you're reinforcing the belief that you're the kind of person who takes action. Clear writes, a habit must be established before it can be improved. You can't optimize something that doesn't exist. The 2-minute rule lowers the barrier so low that it's almost impossible to say no. And that's the point. Success begins when starting becomes effortless. He also warns us not to confuse motion with action. Motion is when you're preparing, planning, or researching, but not actually doing the thing. For example, making a perfect workout plan isn't the same as working out. Researching how to start a business isn't the same as building one. The 2-minute rule eliminates overthinking and pushes you into real movement. Of course, some people might think, how can doing something for 2 minutes make any difference? But Clear reminds us that habits are the compound interest of self-improvement. A small start today grows into something powerful over time. It's not about perfection, it's about momentum. Once a habit is in motion, you can naturally expand it. Reading 1 page becomes 2, then 3, then a chapter. Meditating for 1 minute turns into 5. Showing up consistently turns effort into identity, and identity into transformation. Clear calls this process gateway habits. These small starter actions open the door to deeper, more meaningful routines. For instance, put on your running shoes can lead to jogging. Write 1 sentence can turn into finishing a page. Play 1 chord on the guitar can become a 30-minute practice session. The gateway habit builds trust in yourself. He ends the chapter with an empowering truth. The secret to success is not massive effort, but consistent beginnings. You don't have to climb the entire staircase, just take the first step. Again and again. So the next time you catch yourself procrastinating, remember this rule: just start. Don't aim for perfect, aim for progress. Do something that takes less than 2 minutes. Because once you get started, you'll often find yourself doing far more than you planned. The path to big change always begins with a small start. And the 2-minute rule is the simplest way to prove to yourself every day that action is easier than avoidance. Start small, stay consistent, and let the momentum carry you forward. That's how procrastination ends and progress begins. Imagine if doing the right thing required no effort at all. If you're good, habits just happened automatically, and your bad habits became almost impossible to repeat. In Chapter 14 of Atomic Habits, James Clear shows exactly how to make that happen. The secret, he says, lies in one simple principle: create a system where good habits are inevitable and bad habits are impossible. Clear begins by reminding us that our habits are not just shaped by motivation or willpower. They're shaped by the environment and systems around us. If your surroundings make good choices easy and bad ones difficult, your behavior naturally follows. You don't need to fight temptation if it's not even there. He introduces a powerful concept called commitment devices. A commitment device is a choice you make in the present that locks in your future behavior. It's a way of taking control of your actions ahead of time. So when the moment of decision comes, your future self doesn't have to rely on discipline. Think of it like this. You're setting up guardrails for your future. For example, if you want to save money, you can set up automatic transfers from your checking account to your savings every payday. If you want to eat healthier, you can subscribe to a meal plan service that delivers nutritious food to your door. If you want to study more, you can leave your phone in another room before sitting down to read. These are all commitment devices. They remove choice in a way that protects your goals. Clear shares the story of Victor Hugo, the French author of The Hunchback of Notre Dame. When he was procrastinating on writing his novel, Hugo came up with an extreme commitment device. He locked away all his clothes, leaving only a large shawl to wear so he couldn't go outside. Trapped indoors with nothing else to do, he wrote furiously and finished his book on time. It's a humorous example, but it shows how powerful this idea can be. The core message is this: design your environment. So your good habits are the path of least resistance, and your bad habits are the path of most resistance. Clear calls this strategy creating a one-time action that automates your future decisions. Once you set it up, you no longer need to rely on willpower. For instance, if you want to exercise more, sign up for a class that charges you if you miss it. If you want to focus better at work, use website blockers to limit distractions. If you want to waste less time on social media, delete the apps or make it harder to log in. Each of these actions adds friction to bad habits, making them harder to repeat, while making good habits more natural and automatic. Clear explains that success often depends less on motivation and more on structure. Most people try to build better habits by increasing their self-control, but that's like swimming upstream. You can do it for a while, but eventually the current wins. The smarter approach is to change the current itself, design an environment that naturally flows toward the behavior you want. He also emphasizes that making a good habit inevitable doesn't have to mean something extreme. Even simple changes can make a huge difference. For example, if you want to drink more water, fill up a bottle and keep it on your desk. If you want to stretch in the morning, roll out your yoga mat the night before. These small adjustments eliminate barriers and make the desired action feel automatic. Clear writes, you don't have to be the victim of your environment. You can be the architect of it. This is one of the most empowering ideas in the entire book. Instead of trying to resist temptation, you can simply remove it. Instead of trying to remember a habit, you can make it impossible to forget. By the end of the chapter, his message is clear and powerful. Create systems that make success inevitable. When good habits are easy, automatic, and built into your environment, they stop feeling like effort. They just become part of who you are. And when bad habits are difficult, inconvenient, and friction-filled, they eventually fade away. So if you want to transform your life, don't depend on willpower. Depend on design. Build environments, systems, and commitments that pull you forward, not temptations that hold you back. Because when good habits are easy and bad habits are hard, change becomes effortless and progress becomes automatic. That's how you make good habits inevitable and bad habits impossible. Why do some habits stick effortlessly while others fade away after just a few days? Why do we sometimes feel motivated to act and other times completely uninterested? In Chapter 15 of Atomic Habits, James Clear reveals what he calls the cardinal rule of behavior change. What is immediately rewarded is repeated. What is immediately punished is avoided. This single rule, he says, explains why good habits can be so hard to build and bad habits so easy to repeat. Most bad habits, like eating junk food, scrolling on social media, or skipping a workout, are instantly rewarding. They make us feel good right now, even if they hurt us later. Good habits, on the other hand, often have delayed rewards. Eating healthy, saving money, or studying doesn't pay off immediately. The results take time to show. Our brains are wired for short-term gratification. Thousands of years ago, focusing on immediate rewards helped humans survive, find food, stay warm, and avoid danger. But today, the same instincts can hold us back. Clear calls this conflict the time inconsistency problem. Our brains value the present more than the future. That's why we often choose what feels good now, even if it costs us later. So how do we fix that? How do we make good habits satisfying right away so that they stick? Clear's answer is simple but powerful. Add immediate rewards to good habits and add immediate consequences to bad ones. We need to flip the script so that positive actions feel satisfying now, not just later. He gives an example of a man who wanted to stop smoking. Each week he avoided cigarettes. He deposited the money he would have spent into a vacation fund. Over time, he could literally see the reward growing. It wasn't just a distant dream, it was an immediate, tangible benefit. Another example comes from a couple who wanted to live healthier. They created a habit contract. They wrote down their goals: eating clean, exercising, staying off junk food, and signed it in front of friends. If they broke their promises, they had to pay 50. That immediate penalty made their bad habits too costly to continue. This approach works because our brains are designed to respond to immediate feedback. Long-term goals are too abstract, they don't motivate us in the moment. But short-term satisfaction or discomfort keeps us accountable today. Clear also suggests using visual cues to make progress rewarding. Habit trackers, checklists, or streak calendars can create a sense of satisfaction. Each checkmark or X becomes a mini dopamine hit, proof that you're staying consistent. That little spark of pride encourages you to keep going. He also introduces the idea of reinforcement, loop cycles where the behavior and the reward reinforce each other. For instance, when you exercise, you feel a rush of endorphins and a sense of accomplishment. That emotional satisfaction becomes part of the habit loop. The more you repeat it, the more your brain associates the behavior with feeling good. The key Clear emphasizes is to make the reward immediate and meaningful. It doesn't have to be big, just something that signals success to your brain. It could be tracking progress, celebrating a streak, or even saying out loud, "I'm proud of myself for doing this." Over time, those small rewards create powerful motivation. But the same principle works in reverse for bad habits. If you make the cost of a bad habit immediate, a fine, a penalty, or social accountability, you'll think twice before repeating it. For example, telling a friend your goal and agreeing to pay them if you fail can turn vague intentions into real commitments. Clear's point is clear. The secret to lasting change is to bring future rewards into the present moment. You have to feel good now about doing the right thing, not just later. He ends the chapter with a powerful thought. Behaviors that are immediately rewarded get repeated. Behaviors that are immediately punished get avoided. It's the simplest rule, but it governs almost everything we do. So if you want your good habits to last, make them instantly satisfying. Celebrate progress, track success, and reward consistency. And if you want your bad habits to die, make them instantly costly. In the end, success isn't about self-control, it's about design. When you make the right behaviors satisfying and the wrong ones painful, you don't need to force discipline your habits. Take care of themselves. That's the cardinal rule of behavior. Change the secret to turning short-term actions into long-term transformation. One of the biggest challenges with building habits isn't starting them, it's sticking with them. Most people can do something new for a few days, maybe even a couple of weeks, but eventually motivation fades, life gets busy, and the habit disappears. In Chapter 16 of Atomic Habits, James Clear shares a simple but powerful strategy to stay consistent for the long run. Never miss twice. Before diving into that, he introduces a concept that helps people visualize their progress: habit tracking. Habit tracking is the simple act of recording whether you did a habit or not. It can be as easy as checking a box, marking an X on a calendar, or keeping a streak count on your phone. Clear says this method may sound basic, but it's one of the most effective ways to stay consistent because it turns invisible progress into something visible. When you track a habit, you get a small sense of accomplishment. Every time you mark it down, it becomes a mini reward, a reminder that you're growing and staying true to your goals. This immediate feedback creates satisfaction and motivation. It's like giving yourself a gold star every day you follow through. Clear shares how comedian Jerry Seinfeld used this method early in his career. Seinfeld's goal was to write jokes every day, so he marked an X. On his wall calendar for each day, he wrote, his only rule? Don't break the chain. Seeing that chain of X's grow was motivating. He didn't want to ruin his streak. Over time, those small daily efforts added up to mastery. Habit tracking works because it serves three purposes. It's a visual cue reminding you to act. It's a motivator that rewards progress, and it's a record that helps you stay accountable. It turns abstract effort into concrete evidence. But what happens when you miss a day? Because let's face it, life happens. You get sick, you travel, you forget, or something unexpected gets in the way. Clear emphasizes that missing once is not the problem, it's missing twice that breaks the habit. The rule is simple. Never miss twice. If you skip a workout today, make sure you show up tomorrow. If you eat junk food at lunch, eat healthy at dinner. If you miss a study session, get back to it the next morning. Missing once is a mistake. Missing twice is the start of a new habit, the habit of giving up. The difference between success and failure often comes down to how quickly you recover from a setback. Clear reminds us that consistency doesn't mean perfection. It means returning to the habit as quickly as possible. Too many people see one slip as a total failure and quit entirely. But in reality, progress is about showing up again and again even after you fall off track. Missing once is an accident, Clear says. Missing twice is a choice. He also warns about the trap of all or nothing thinking, believing that if you can't do something perfectly, it's not worth doing at all. Instead, he suggests adopting a do-something mindset. Even on your worst day, do a tiny version of your habit. If you can't run 5 miles, run for 5 minutes. If you can't write a full page, write 1 sentence. These small efforts keep your momentum alive. Habit tracking also helps you notice trends. Over time, you can look back and see patterns when you're most consistent, when you tend to fall off, what triggers success or failure. This self-awareness is gold for long-term improvement. But perhaps the most important lesson of this chapter is this: measure what matters, but don't obsess over perfection. Habit tracking is a tool, not a test. Its purpose is to remind you of progress, not to make you feel guilty. Missing once doesn't erase your growth, it's just a moment. What truly defines you is how quickly you start again. By the end of the chapter, Clear's message is clear, and encouraging habits are built on consistency, not intensity. What matters most is that you keep showing up even when it's hard, even when it's small, even when it's imperfect. So, track your habits, celebrate your progress, forgive your slip-ups, and most importantly, never miss twice. Because success doesn't come from never falling, it comes from always standing back up. That's how you stick with good habits every day. We all know what it's like to make a promise to ourselves to start anew, habit, stay disciplined, or quit a bad behavior, only to break that promise a few days later. It's easy to let ourselves off the hook when no one's watching. But when someone is watching, everything changes. In Chapter 17 of Atomic Habits, James Clear explains how social accountability can be the missing piece that makes your habits stick for good. He begins with a simple truth: we care deeply about what others think of us. Whether we admit it or not, social approval and belonging are powerful motivators. Clear calls this the power of social expectations, the invisible force that shapes our behavior every day. We naturally want to fit in, be respected, and avoid embarrassment. When used wisely, that instinct can become a superpower for personal growth. The key idea in this chapter is the concept of an accountability partner. This is someone who holds you responsible for your actions, not through punishment, but through support, honesty, and shared commitment. When you know someone is paying attention, you're far less likely to skip a habit or break a promise. Clear shares stories and research showing how accountability transforms behavior. One study found that people were far more likely to stick to their workout goals when they had a partner checking in on them. Another experiment showed that simply knowing your progress was being tracked even by a stranger could dramatically increase consistency. He also gives the example of habit contracts, which we briefly saw in Chapter 15. A habit contract is a written agreement you make with another person or a group about the habit you want to maintain. You state your goals, sign it, and agree on rewards or penalties if you succeed or fail. It sounds simple, but this small bit of public commitment can have a huge impact because it raises the stakes. Imagine signing a contract that says, I will go to the gym 3 times a week. If I skip, I'll pay my accountability partner $50. Now, skipping isn't just about losing momentum. It's about losing money and facing embarrassment. The pain of breaking your promise outweighs the comfort of giving in. Suddenly, following through becomes the easiest choice. But accountability doesn't have to be formal or financial. It can be as simple as telling a friend your goals and checking in weekly. It can be joining a group of people who share your values, a study group, a running club, or a professional network. When you surround yourself with people who expect excellence, you naturally rise to that level. Clear emphasizes that the groups we belong to shape our behavior more than we realize. Humans are tribal creatures. We mirror the habits of those around us. If your circle celebrates fitness, you'll be drawn to exercise. If your circle values learning, you'll be drawn to read and grow. But if your circle normalizes laziness or negativity, those behaviors will quietly become your default too. That's why one of the smartest moves you can make is to join a culture where your desired behavior is the norm. Want to read more? Join a book club. Want to start a business? Join a community of entrepreneurs. When your environment reinforces your habits, it stops feeling like work. It just feels like belonging. Clear explains that this principle combines both social pressure and social reward. You don't want to let others down, but you also feel proud to live up to their expectations. This dual motivation, avoiding shame and earning respect, is what makes accountability so powerful. He also notes that accountability helps overcome a common problem with self-improvement. We're great at rationalizing our excuses. Alone, we can justify skipping a workout or breaking a rule. But with a partner, those excuses lose their power. The act of explaining your choices to someone else forces honesty, and honesty drives discipline. By the end of the chapter, Clear's message is clear and deeply practical. You don't have to rely on willpower when you can rely on people. Surround yourself with those who hold you to a higher standard, who celebrate your progress and who remind you of who you want to become. Because when you have someone watching, cheering, and expecting your best, you rise to meet that standard. So find your accountability partner. Make the commitment public. Turn your goals into promises and your promises into action. In the end, change happens faster and lasts longer when you're not doing it alone. That's the real power of accountability. It turns good intentions into consistent action. That's how an accountability partner can change everything. Have you ever looked at someone incredibly successful and thought, they were just born for it? Maybe it's a gifted musician, a natural athlete, or a brilliant entrepreneur. People who make excellence look effortless. In Chapter 18 of Atomic Habits, James Clear explores this exact idea, the role of talent and genetics in success, and reveals how we can all use our natural strengths to our advantage. He begins with a simple truth: yes, genes matter, but they don't decide everything. Your genes set the boundaries of your potential, but your habits determine how much of that potential you actually realize. Clear explains that while talent gives you a head start, it's consistent habits that carry you to mastery. He shares an insightful story about Michael Phelps and Haitham El Guerrouj, two Olympic gold medalists from very different sports. Phelps, the legendary swimmer, has an unusually long torso, short legs, and massive wingspan, perfect for cutting through water. El Guerrouj, a world-class runner, has long legs and a slender frame built for speed on land. Both are world champions. But if they switched sports, their natural advantages would become disadvantages. The lesson: success often comes from playing a game that fits your strengths. Clear calls this the idea of matching your genes to your environment. The people who succeed are not just those who work the hardest. They're often those who find a field or activity that aligns with their natural abilities and interests. In other words, the key is not just discipline, but fit. He encourages readers to ask themselves, what feels fun to me, but hard for others? What comes naturally, even when it's challenging? The answers to those questions often point toward your unique advantage, your natural zone of genius. When your habits align with your strengths, progress feels easier and motivation becomes automatic. Clear isn't saying talent is everything, far from it. He explains that talent only determines where you start. Habits decide how far you go. The most successful people aren't necessarily the most gifted. They're the ones who found the right field and then stayed consistent long enough to master it. He introduces the concept of explore and exploit. In the beginning, you should explore. Try different things. Experiment, see what fits. Once you discover the activities that align with your strengths, exploit them, double down, refine your craft and go all in. This balance allows you to discover where you naturally thrive while still committing deeply once you find it. Clear also reminds us that genes don't just shape what we're good at, they also influence what we enjoy. We tend to like activities that we're naturally better at because they give us small wins early on. That early success builds confidence, which fuels motivation. It's a positive feedback loop. You enjoy what you're good at and you get better at what you enjoy. But the opposite can also be true when you're constantly struggling in a field that doesn't fit your strengths, frustration builds, and progress stalls. That's why Clear encourages readers to choose habits that match their identity and strengths, not just trends or external pressure. Don't force yourself to do what others are good at. Find what you can become great at. He uses a powerful line to summarize this idea. Genes do not eliminate the need for hard work. They clarify it. In other words, understanding your natural advantages doesn't make you lazy, it makes you strategic. It helps you focus your effort where it matters most. Think of your habits like rowing a boat. Your genes determine the direction of the current. Some paths will flow faster for you than others. You can row upstream if you want, but it's exhausting. Instead, find the current that flows with you. Build habits that move naturally with your strengths, and your effort will multiply. By the end of the chapter, Clear's message is deeply empowering. You don't have to be born with the extraordinary talent to achieve extraordinary results. You just have to find where your natural abilities meet consistent effort. Success is not about being the best at everything. It's about being the best at what suits you. So find your strengths. Align your habits with your natural abilities. Work hard where your effort has the greatest return. Because when talent and habit work together, excellence stops being forced, it becomes effortless. That's the truth about talent and the real secret to lasting success. Have you ever wondered why it's so hard to stay motivated, even for things you care about? One day you're full of energy and excitement, ready to chase your goals, and the next day you can't find the will to move forward. In Chapter 19 of Atomic Habits, James Clear reveals the secret to long-term motivation, something he calls the Goldilocks rule, a simple formula for staying engaged and consistent in anything you do. The Goldilocks rule is based on a timeless truth humans experience: peak motivation when working on tasks that are just on the edge of their abilities. Not too hard, not too easy, but just right. If something feels too easy, we get bored. If it feels too hard, we get discouraged. But when a challenge is perfectly balanced with our skill level, we enter a state of flow, that magical zone where time flies and progress feels natural. Clear shares a story about professional athletes and performers. Even after reaching elite levels, they don't just practice the basics or push themselves to extremes every day. Instead, they operate right at their edge, where growth still happens, but failure doesn't crush their confidence. This balance keeps them improving while maintaining enjoyment. That's the Goldilocks rule in action. He gives a relatable example. Imagine playing tennis. If you're a beginner and you play against a professional, you'll probably lose every point and feel frustrated. But if you play against a child, you'll win easily and get bored. However, if you play someone who's just a little better than you, every rally feels exciting, you're challenged but capable. That's when motivation thrives. Clear explains that the same principle applies to all habits. When you're learning something new, a language, a skill, a fitness routine, the trick is to find the level that stretches you slightly beyond your comfort zone, but not so far that it overwhelms you. Consistent challenge keeps you growing consistent. Success keeps you confident. Together they create flow. But motivation doesn't last forever, even with the right challenge level. So Clear addresses another truth. The greatest threat to success is boredom. The problem isn't that we don't know what to do, it's that we get tired of doing it. The excitement of starting fades and the routine feels dull. That's when most people quit, not because it's hard, but because it's repetitive. Clear points out that professionals in sports art or business succeed not because they avoid boredom, but because they embrace it. They keep showing up even when it's not exciting. They understand that mastery means falling in love with the process, not just the results. He gives an example from Olympic weightlifting coach Glenn Pendlay, who said, "At some point it comes down to who can handle the boredom of training every day. Champions aren't always the most talented. They're the ones who keep going when it's no longer fun." So, how do you stay motivated when the excitement fades? Clear suggests shifting your focus from results to identity. Instead of chasing outcomes, remind yourself of who you're becoming. You're not just working out, you're becoming a healthy person. You're not just writing, you're becoming a writer. This subtle shift keeps you grounded in purpose when motivation dips. He also recommends designing your environment to make consistent action easier. Small cues, routines, and accountability can carry you through the dull days. When habits are automatic, you don't need constant motivation, you just need momentum. The Goldilocks rule also teaches us that growth is a never-ending cycle. Once something becomes too easy, you must raise the challenge slightly. If it becomes too hard, scale back until you're back in that just right zone. Progress lives in the balance between comfort and challenge. By the end of the chapter, Clear's message becomes clear and deeply human. Success isn't about being endlessly motivated. It's about designing your habits and mindset so that you can keep going even when motivation fades. He reminds us professionals, stick to the schedule. Amateurs, let life get in the way. The secret to mastery isn't in being inspired every day. It's in learning to show up, especially when you're not. So find your just right level. Stay in that zone where challenge and ability meet. Embrace boredom as part of the process. And remember, motivation isn't something you chase. It's something you build by showing up again and again. That's the Goldilocks rule, the key to staying motivated in life and work long after the excitement is gone. We often think habits are the ultimate key to success, and in many ways they are. They make our lives easier, our routines smoother, and our goals more achievable. But in Chapter 20 of Atomic Habits, James Clear reminds us of something important. Even good habits have a downside. While habits create efficiency and consistency, they can also create complacency. And if we're not careful, what once helped us grow can eventually hold us back. Clear starts by explaining that habits are powerful because they allow our brains to go on autopilot. Once a behavior becomes automatic, we can perform it without thinking, like brushing our teeth, tying our shoes, or driving home from work. This automation saves energy and frees up our minds for other tasks. But here's the catch. When something becomes automatic, we stop paying attention. This lack of awareness can lead to stagnation. Clear writes, the downside of habits is that you get used to doing things a certain way and you stop seeing your mistakes. The very efficiency that makes habits so useful can also blind us to opportunities for improvement. He gives the example of professionals who plateau in their careers. After years of experience, they've built strong routines and reliable skills, but because they rely on habit alone, they stop pushing themselves. A surgeon may perform hundreds of operations. A musician may play the same songs night after night, or a manager may handle projects the same way for years. They're still competent, but they've stopped improving. Clear explains that this happens because once a skill becomes automatic, we shift from deliberate practice to mindless repetition. True mastery, however, requires conscious attention and refinement. It's not enough to just repeat, you must reflect and refine. To avoid this trap, Clear introduces the idea of reflection and review. Just as companies hold performance reviews to evaluate progress, we need to do the same for our personal habits. Regular reflection helps us identify what's working, what's not, and where we can grow. Without reflection, habits can lock us into outdated behaviors even when they're no longer effective. He suggests setting aside time to review your goals. Track your habits and ask key questions like, what went well this week? What didn't go well? What could I do differently next time? These simple questions create self-awareness, which keeps you from drifting into autopilot. Clear also points out that small improvements compound over time, but so do small errors. If you repeat a bad habit or an inefficient process long enough, it can quietly erode your progress. Reflection acts as a safety net, catching mistakes before they grow. He mentions that top performers in every field, athletes, artists, executives, all have systems for feedback. They record their performances, analyze their results, and constantly tweak their approach. That's what separates continuous growth from stagnation. As Clear puts it, you don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems, and your systems need regular maintenance. Another subtle danger of habits, Clear explains, is identity lock. Once a behavior becomes part of your identity, you can become resistant to change. For example, someone who sees themselves as a runner might ignore other forms of fitness. A teacher who's always used one teaching style may resist new methods. When your habits define you too narrowly, growth feels like a threat. To counter this, Clear encourages flexibility. Be proud of your identity, but don't be trapped by it. Your goal is to be the type of person who is constantly improving, not someone who has already arrived. He writes, the mark of true mastery is the ability to maintain improvement even after you've become good. By the end of the chapter, his message is clear. Good habits are a foundation, not a finish line. They should help you grow, not trap you in comfort. The best performers use habits to create consistency, but they pair them with reflection to fuel growth. So don't just ask, am I doing my habits? Ask, are my habits still serving me? Because progress requires more than repetition, it requires awareness. The real secret isn't to build perfect habits, but to stay awake inside them. That's the balance between automation and improvement, and it's how you turn good habits into lifelong mastery. As Atomic Habits comes to an end, James Clear leaves us with one powerful message. True change is not about a single moment of transformation, it's about the endless process of refinement. The real secret to lasting success lies in small, consistent improvements that compound over time. Every tiny habit, every subtle choice, every repeated action, they're all shaping who you become. Clear reminds us that life is not a sprint, it's a continuous evolution. The habits you build today will quietly determine the person you are tomorrow. The book began with the simple idea that habits are the compound interest of self-improvement. Just as money multiplies when interest compounds, the effects of your habits grow exponentially as they repeat over time. He emphasizes that success is never the result of one big decision, one lucky break, or one massive effort. It's built from 1,000 small actions stacked day after day, often unseen by others. The work you do when no one's watching, the little things that seem insignificant, are the very things that change your life. Clear wants us to understand that habits are not about achieving one goal. They're about creating a system that makes success inevitable. If you fix the inputs, your daily actions, your routines, your mindset, the outputs will take care of themselves. It's not about setting massive goals and waiting for motivation to strike. It's about showing up, doing the work, and trusting the process. He also revisits the importance of identity-based habits. True behavior change isn't about what you want to achieve, it's about who you want to become. Goals are about outcomes, but identity is about beliefs. When you focus on identity, habits stick, because every small win becomes evidence of who you are. If you want to be a writer, write something, even a sentence, and prove it to yourself. If you want to be fit, move your body even for 5 minutes. Every small action reinforces your desired identity. Over time, these little proofs add up. The person you become is simply the sum of your repeated choices. As Clear beautifully puts it, every action you take is a vote for the type of person you wish to become. The more votes you cast for your desired identity, the stronger it becomes. But he also warns us not to fall into the trap of perfection. You don't need to be flawless, you just need to be consistent. Missing a habit once doesn't ruin your progress. What matters is that you never miss twice. Small setbacks don't erase your effort, giving up does. Success is built on resilience, the ability to start again even after failure. Clear closes with a powerful reflection habits are not a finish line to be crossed. They are a lifestyle to be lived. The process never ends because growth never stops. There's always another level of refinement, another small improvement to make another opportunity, to become just a little bit better. He encourages us to think long-term, to imagine what life could look like if we stuck with small positive habits for years. Imagine where you could be if you simply improved by 1% every day. At first, it feels invisible, but eventually those small wins compound into something extraordinary. That's the quiet magic of atomic habits. They turn ordinary effort into remarkable results. Finally, James Clear reminds us that the goal isn't just to build habits for success, it's to build a system for continuous growth. When you live by systems rather than chase goals, you free yourself from disappointment. You learn to love the process itself, because the process, not the prize, is what shapes your character and sustains your success. The real reward of building good habits is not what you get, but who you become. It's about creating a version of yourself that's disciplined, confident, and in control. A person who doesn't just dream of change, but lives it daily. So as the book closes, Clear leaves us with a challenge and a promise. Start small, stay consistent, and never stop improving. The effects may seem invisible at first, but with time, they'll become unstoppable. Because success doesn't come from one big leap. It's built one small habit at a time. That's the secret to results that last.